Hey, what's up, welcome back, another Pokefair video. And so Bede is coming out tonight, right, with the GMax Hatterene. And as usual, we'll talk about the unit, right, a bit. Although, I mean, in terms of like the conclusion, I think folks know, right, it doesn't matter how powerful, you know, Bede is. And well, I guess it matters a bit, but clearly Bede isn't. And I do think he's a good unit. I think he's a good unit. He's a really nice unit. But he's definitely not like a top 5 unit in the game or top 10 unit in the game. And obviously with 3 other Master Fairs up at the moment, it's slightly hard to justify pulling on his banner, right? Considering, again, there's 3 Master Fairs up at the moment. On top of that, there's also like 2 other Pokefairs that are also both very powerful units. Debatable, but in my opinion, I think both SS Morty and SS Giovanni are generally better pulls than Bede himself, right? But again, the Master Fairs exist, so it slightly he makes a justification to pull for Bede Rock. But anyways, let's look at the unit regardless, right? And you know, see if there's any for folks who just don't know what he does. We'll talk about it, and then we'll talk about why probably not really that much, you know, worth pulling, even though again he is actually a pretty good unit, right? So first of all, looking at the stats, right, don't get anything really great here. Special attack's not that good, speed's not that good, HP's defenses are, none of the stats are really good, right? But moving on, you have your 3 moves, which are Dazzling Gleam, Mystical Fire, and Psybeam. Mystical Fire does debuff the opponent's special attack by 1 rank every time you hit them, right? So that's nice to have, right? Especially if you're trying to trigger some certain, you know, minus special defense, or not special defense, special attack multipliers, right? There's plenty of them, right? Whether overpowered, devastation, etc., right? So that's something. And then obviously Psybeam, Dazzling Gleam. The big obvious part about this having 3 different types is it's a GMax, right? So you get to use max moves of 3 different varieties. First one, GMax Smite. That's obviously, you know, GMax Hatterene's special thing, right? Which confuses the entire opponent's team, which is fine, I guess. Not anything crazy, but Max Flurry does give you Sun, and Max Mindstorm does give you Psychic Terrain. So this one unit gives you an extra Sun option or an extra Psychic Terrain option. So that in of itself, I do think is very good, right? A unit, again, that could set you both Sun and Psychic Terrain. Not that you know, you could use them in the same run. Obviously, you could only use 1 max move per battle. Nor is there any scenario that you want to run like a Sun team, like a Sun and Psychic Terrain team. I don't think there's that scenario either. But anyways, regardless, you can't do it anyways. You can only, you know, pick one. But regardless, again, having another option for both Sun and Psychic Terrain is definitely good, right? That's definitely a good thing. And obviously, max moves, they do pretty good damage in of themselves. You know, with the very high BP, obviously. So there's always that as well. Again, GMax Smite in of itself, Confusion's not that big of a deal, but you do have a lot of multipliers based on Confusion and some other, you know, cool things that you could do when the that you can do with opponents confused. Why did that took me so hard to say? Anyways, but yeah, back to regular base Hatterene. You have your training move, which is back to apply status condition reflection to your field, which is okay. It's not super useful, right? It really isn't super useful. A lot of status conditions, unless it's like sleep or whatever, right, don't really affect opponents that much, because a lot of opponents do have reduction or resistance, really heavy resistance to a lot of status conditions in the game. There are certain ones that obviously do get countered pretty hard by certain status conditions, right? Again, obviously certain Legendary Gauntlet stages, for example, get hard countered by a lot of different statuses, but they also don't really are the ones that deal out that status in the first place either, so yeah, the status reflection thing isn't that big of a deal, I find. There's probably going to be like specific stages designed in the new rival event that does, you know, status you, that you really want to status them back with. So, as they do with most units when they come out, they give you a stage that's really, you know, suitable for them, right? Makes sense. Raises your special attack and crit by 2, and then lowers your defense by 1. It's pretty standard. +1 crit, or +2 crit, +2 special attack. Pretty standard, nothing too crazy. And then your Sync Nuke multiplier is based on having the opponent confused, right? So, again, that's a big multiplier because he's a big nuker, right? As for your passives, you have Baffle Buff, Powers up your moves and sync moves when the opponent's confused by 90%, which is a lot. But also still keep in mind, these are still just 2-gauge moves, so it's not going to get that great, right? Some of them could get decent. The one that kind of sucks is the fairy one, right? Because the fairy one, first of all, it's AoE. Second of all, it's fairy type, which you don't get sun like mystical fire, or you don't get psychic terrain with Psybeam, and obviously Psybeam does have the higher BP over here of the three. So there's that. Stupefaction 9, 100% chance of lowering the opponent's special attack and special defense by 1 when you use a move, sync move, or max move when you hit an opponent, right? So this is really, really nice, especially if you're running Bede with like an anniversary May, because anniversary May obviously does have ways to debuff the or not ways. Well, it does have ways. Well, for special attack, but have multipliers based on debuffing the opponents, having the opponent's special defense and physical. Blah, what am I saying, man? Okay, give me a break. It's like midnight my time, right? I should be asleep. But anyways, does have multipliers that are based on having the opponent's special attack and special defense debuffed. There we go. That's better. So obviously running Bede and anime is going to be very, very beneficial for anime, right? Well, beneficial for both, I guess, but more so anime than Bede. Max superpowered 5, that's an extra 50% to your moves, sync moves, max moves, if they're, super effective, right? Against the opponent, so that's pretty straightforward. So yeah, that's Bede, basically, right? It's a confusion unit that could debuff the opponent's special attacks, special defenses. You got 3 different max moves, 2 of them that can set terrain, 1 that AoE confuses the opponent, which is not that big of a deal, let's be real. Again, outside of for Bede's own like damage stuff, right? Because again, most units that do have confusion multipliers also have really good ways of confusing the opponent. In fact, most of them have better ways than Bede in terms of confusing the opponent, right? If you look at something like a Mallow or whatever, right, it's just much more reliable ways of confusing the opponent. I mean, it's not that Bede's way is not reliable. I mean, it's a guaranteed confusion AoE, but it's just also you waste the max move on using like max smite instead of either the other 2, which are generally the better ones. Let's be real, max flare or max mindstorm, unless you're finding a fairy weak unit, which is fine, right? So yeah, anyways, moving on to the grid, in terms of if you are trying to go for a Bede, how many copies do you want, right? So first, 1 out of 5, you don't really get much. You just get move gauge refresh on all 3 of them, which is not bad, but also not anything crazy either. 2 out of 5, you got some weird stuff. You get speeding sun, healing sun, obviously, since you could set your own sun. But also, I guess speeding sun 2 is not that bad, but healing sun, I mean, it's just like healing sun 1, and you're not a tank anyway, so. Gobsmack 4 is not that bad, I do feel, right? Especially if you are running Bede against like psychic or fire weak stages, or teams where you're trying to set up sun or psychic terrain, right, instead of fair weak stages, so then you don't have to use max smite to get the opponents confused, to get your own Bede's own selfish multipliers in there, right? Gobsmack 4 helps a lot with that, at least. Super duper effective is pretty straightforward, right? Group therapies, kind of whatever, honestly. Like, if you know that stage is gonna status you, just set up the shield before that, or reflection, whatever. Precognition, weird recovery, just a psychic terrain version of speeding sun and healing sun, obviously. So 10 out of 5, you do have one nice thing in Gobsmack 4, which again is nice when you're not facing fair weak opponents, at least for Bede. Moving on, 3 out of 5, you got all the stuff, obviously. Confusion Synergy 9, that's extra 90%, which is very, very nice if you're trying to do, again, get some selfish Bede damage output, right? As for outside of that, you got the power-ups for your max moves, which are good, I guess. Got Hard Knocks 1, which is really, really nice, right? Just a straight up, random stat debuff on the opponent every time you hit him with whatever, right? Move, sync move, or max move. So that's nice, right? Superfire for 50% chance of lowering the opponent's special defense. Right? That's really, really good, again, especially if you're running Bede with Anniversary May. Got Ramp Up on your trainer move, which is decent as well, right? So you don't have to use a support to max out Bede's own special or offensive stats. Fuzzy Strike 5, extra 50% on your sync move, obviously, which is really good, because Bede's Sync Nuke is actually really, really nice, right? If you look at Bede's Sync Nuke damage, obviously that's the strongest in terms of the fairy ones, right? I mean, it's just, it's only 100k higher than, you know, Marnie's maximum advantage, but still, it's slightly better. But yeah, obviously very, very, very powerful, right? In terms of Sync Nuke damage, look how much it is in comparison to like something like Dianthus, right? So a lot of Sync Nuke damage over there. GMax Smite's damage is not bad either, right? 2 million's not bad at all. That's very, very good. Again, Bede just lacks in terms of the regular move damage, especially Dazzling Gleam, right? Especially Dazzling Gleam. The other ones aren't as bad, but Dazzling Gleam is just like, this is just sad, right? This is not very good. This is not very good. As for the other damage, right? The other stuff is definitely a lot better. For example, a Side Beam, you could actually get some really, really respectable numbers. This is very, very, very good in terms of Side Beam numbers, right? The setup is actually not like, it's not really terrible, because like, you know, all you really need is just to like confuse them a bit, right? In there, which is again not super hard, especially since Side Beam has its own 10%. Only 10% chance to confuse the opponent. Anyways, it's not like it's that bad, right? Again, extra super effective stuff. So again, Bede's psychic type damage is definitely very, very, very nice. And then obviously again, you do have Max Mindstorm there as well. That's another 3 million, which is very, very good. I'm assuming that's with Psychic Terrain though, but still very, very nice at least. And then you also have Bede's fire version, right? Which is not as good, right? In terms of Mystical Fire itself, just because Mystical Fire's BP is so much lower, right? But again, the max move damage is definitely not bad over here, right? That's again 3 million. That's really, really good stuff. So yeah, basically TLDR, I guess, but a very, very good Sync Nuke. Max move damage is all really nice. Side Beam's the strongest regular move. Max Flare and Max Mindstorm are basically as strong as each other. They're both better than Max Smite in terms of damage, right? And then again, obviously the Sync Nuke is fairy type, so yeah, that's Bede in terms of being a damage dealer, right? Again, Bede, I feel like a lot of his like great stuff that he does, like tech wise, right, does fit with anime very, very well, right? There's a few other units as well that could also use the multipliers, but generally it seems like it's almost built as like a anime partner over here, right? Which is again very, very good in this sense. But outside of that, again, it's just a general debuffer. That's really nice, right? Although more oriented towards special debuffs, right? Again, it does remind me a lot of classic Elisa, right? In terms of, you know, it's a Pokefair that is a solid unit, definitely a very, very nice unit that just dropped in the middle of absolute craziness in terms of other units that dropped at the same time, so kind of gets ignored a bit. But again, also does a lot of similar things in terms of debuffing opponents, right? This one's afflicting the opponents. Obviously, classic Lisa's more of statusing the opponents, and then they both set up terrain / weather, right? So pretty similar units, I'd say, in a lot of ways. So that's slightly funny. But yeah, again, Bede's a nice unit. It's just that like there's 3 Master Fairs that are like some of the best units in the game, right? Top units in the game. And also Master Fairs take a very long time to rerun. In fact, none of them has rerun yet. They're gonna definitely rerun it eventually, but it's just taking a long time, right? So that's why I'd say as good as Bede is, it's definitely on very, very low on the list of banners to summon on, right, that are up right now. Again, kind of sucks for Bede, but I mean, it is what it is. You just have monster units up at the moment. It's very, very hard to just justify summoning for Bede, which is, again, objectively a solid and nice unit, right? There's nothing like really terrible about the unit. I guess you could argue, like, if you're not doing psychic type DPS, I guess your damage, regular move damage isn't that good, but like outside of that, right, just a really, really solid tech unit that can nuke. Right? I'll set up the again, terrain, weather stuff. As for the pull grade for this banner, again, if you're a whale, this is obviously a nice unit. You whale, you go for it, right? Again, it's like it's a 3 unit in one sort of deal, like kind of like SS Giovanni, right? You know, SS Giovanni got the steel stuff going, the ground stuff going, the poison stuff going, and then Bede's got the psychic, fire, and fairy, which all three are much less desirable in terms of typings. Also, regular move damage wise, doesn't do as much as Giovanni, obviously. Plus, Giovanni has his max moves too, so again, it's a good unit. If you're a whale, you could go for it. But otherwise, again, if you are a free-to-play player, I'd say this is probably like a 5 out of 10 for me, right? Again, it's a good unit. It's on a good banner, right? Pokefairs are not bad banners. Pokefairs are generally pretty good banners. It's just that, again, everything else is so much more worth pulling for or going for instead, right? It just makes the Bede banners seem like, oh, man. Again, I really have a hard time justifying pulling for Bede over any of SS Chris, SS Lyra, SS Ethan even, honestly. SS Giovanni, SS Morty. Hard time justifying pulling for Bede over any of those, unless you're just a super fan of Bede, which, in that case, if you're, Bede's your favorite character, go for it. You love Hatterene, go for it, right? Again, it's not a bad unit, it's a good unit. If you pull for Bede, it's not a bad decision, right? Especially if you really, really like the character. But if you don't care for the character, if you don't really care for again Hatterene, I'd say you should probably go for the other 5 units before this one. All right. Anyways, that's me. This one, I guess. Obviously, we will be pulling for Bede later tonight when he drops. So stay tuned for that on the channel. So yeah, have fun, folks. Good luck, you guys are pulling and all that stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one then.